We'll now call the meeting of the Waco City Council on July 2nd, 2024 to order at 6:03 p.m. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to call a little audible here tonight and go out of order here for a second because we want to celebrate the hiring of a new employee here. So I will now convene into regular session for Resolution 2024-510. Is that the right way to do it, City Attorney?
Yes, convene for regular session.
Convene for regular session, yes. And that is to discuss the first resolution, which is considering a resolution confirming the appointment of Scott Walker as Fire Chief of the City of Waco, Texas, with said appointment to begin on August 11th, 2024. And City Manager Ford, I believe you're going to kick off the recognition.
Welcome, Mayor and Council, and all of our firefighters in the back of the room. Glad to see everybody here. Over the last few months, we've performed an extensive national search and had a really talented group of individuals apply to be Waco's next police chief, all across the country, even a few international. Sorry. Fire chief. Thank you, Fire Chief. Off to a good start, Paul. It'll get better, you promise? We had an exceptional group of semifinalists and finalists, and I'm proud to bring forward tonight Scott Walker as our next fire chief. He's joined here today by his wife, Barb. Scott, if you didn't read his bio, joins Waco from the 5th largest fire department in the country in Phoenix, Arizona. With over 30 years experience in their department, he served in a variety of roles from division chief to battalion chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, executive assistant chief, and his background is highlighted by lots of skills that we're going to make good use of here in Waco, including emergency operations, fire prevention, finance, fleet, and a particular interest around leadership development. In his most recent role as the executive assistant chief, that's the second in command in Phoenix, by the way. That's their second highest position. He managed the daily operations in key sections such as finance, IT, logistics, safety, and injury prevention, giving him executive oversight of almost a $500 million budget, including a $100 million capital improvement program.
Wow.
He served at Phoenix, has played host to Super Bowls, college football championships, other major events, and Scott served on the team there in a critical role as a task force leader, rescue team manager, and I could really continue on and on. He is a very talented individual, and we're proud to have him. His educational background is a bachelor's degree in public safety and emergency management from Grand Canyon University. So there is some connectivity to Waco because I believe their basketball coach is a Drew. Is that right? Scott Drew's brother, I believe?
That's right.
Yeah, and he's completed the executive leadership program at the Naval Postgraduate School. I don't think I'm overstating it when I say that his resume is great, but his time with us in Waco, there's about 40 people that served on interview panels and evaluating who the right next fire chief is for Waco, about 40 people. And I really will say that it was dang near a unanimous decision. Of those 40 people, he stood out as the clear choice for moving this department forward due to his dedication to professionalism and personal development, leadership development. And it's not something he just talked about, he's been doing it for years. You can even Google his name and Scott Walker YouTube Leadership Development, and you'll find a number of classes that are online. Finally, before I turn it over back to the council and have you act on this item, I want to say a special note of gratitude to Fire Chief Kevin McGee, who served as our interim chief for the second time in my tenure. We really appreciate that Chief McGee has made Waco his home away from home, and he served this community and our department very well. Chief, I know that you've enjoyed your time, but we've also enjoyed learning from you And I would just say that if we can ever be of service to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. As Mayor mentioned, following tonight's confirmation, hopefully, we'll look forward to Chief Walker returning back to Waco and starting duty August 11th. With that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
We'll have discussion after we have the motion in the second. Do we have a motion on Resolution 2024-510?
So moved?
We have a motion in a second. Let's have some discussion about this. Who wants to start?
I would say a hearty welcome to the chief. We look forward to you leading our fire department, and we hold ourselves here at our fire department to a very high standard, and they meet that standard. And so we're very excited for you to lead this wonderful team that we have in this department. So thank you for stepping out and joining us here in Waco, and we hope that this will be a wonderful season of life for you in leadership here.
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm a big NBA fan. They just had the NBA draft, and it's funny that to get the best player in the NBA, you always have to be one of the worst teams. And it's great to know that that's not how it works in real life, because we have an awesome team here, and we're getting who, for all intents and purposes, is the best player to add to our team. So I'm really grateful to have you here. I can't wait for August 11th for you to set up shop here in Waco, and I'm excited to see the direction you take our department. So thank you for being willing to serve as our chief.
Can I call him chief right now, or do I wait?
Soon to be, yeah.
Would you raise your hand? There you are. I was looking all in the back, and I said, I don't see him back there. Welcome aboard. I know you're going to have a grand time with our super fine fire department. We're real proud of our fire department as well as our police department, but I think we have two of the best departments in the world. And so welcome aboard. And as a council member and from District 2, if there's anything that you need to know about District 2, feel free to come and ask me. I will answer as best I can, and I would be real honored to introduce you to the folks in District 2. So welcome aboard.
Future Chief Walker.
You said it right.
It is a pleasure to have you as a part of our team. Mayor will always say that our commitment to being best in class in this community, and that is so easy to say in the men and women that we have serving in our fire team and police team especially, but certainly our City of Waco team. You couldn't have picked a better time to come into our community, just because every day is a new season, and regardless that you are coming to a smaller community, we dream big and in color, and former mayor would say we're the smallest member on the varsity team. So we think big and we think progressive, and we're looking forward to leaders who cast vision, who support the team, and who find their village in Waco, which is incredibly easy to do, because this is one of those cities that you will absolutely see yourself in. So welcome. If Councilmember Rodriguez and my colleagues have said that we are here to be of service to you, and can't wait to see what you do for our city and our team. Welcome, and your family as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Bearfield. We do have our new Councilmember, George Chase. George, can you hear us? You're zooming in tonight. I know that you're freshly minted here, so we're getting you in while you're on vacation. I really appreciate you jumping in. I did want to give you an opportunity to welcome our new chief.
Absolutely. I will just echo the comments that have already been made. The chief is certainly fantastically qualified, and we really look forward to having him here in Waco.
Thanks, Councilmember Chase. Soon to be Chief Walker, great resume, wide and varied experience in a large city experience that we value here, and we look forward to your service starting here. As Councilmember Bearfield alluded to, the city of Waco likes to punch above its weight. We like to go for the best. We like to go best in class. A lot of us have business experience here, and we have a great city manager and a great city team, and we like to hire the best of the best. So welcome to Waco. You're inheriting a great team, and it's evidenced here by all the firefighters here tonight, which I'm happy to see. We've got the best in the U.S., I would say the best in the world. We place a high value in the city of Waco on public safety. We have a great police chief, Victorian, and we're matching that now with a great fire chief, Walker. I also want to say, again, thanks to Interim Chief McGee for coming. Where are you, Chief McGee? Right over here, yeah. You're on the chief row there, it looks like. Anyway, thanks again. Hope, and come back again and join us anytime you want there, Chief. But anyway, we think we have a well-equipped, well-staffed, we've got a well-equipped, well-staffed team. We've got 2 new fire stations being built, so we're very ambitious on how we look at the fire safety. ISO 1 rating that we'll expect you to make sure you keep that in place. Anyway, welcome to the city of Waco, and with that, I will call the council for the vote.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ewing?
Yes.
Borderood?
Yes.
Chase?
Yes.
Aye. Welcome to Waco, Chief Walker. Appreciate it. We'll now go back to reconvene hold on. I got to get the wording right
Back
here.
to our regularly
We
scheduled
are now
programming.
reconvening the work session. Right, City Attorney? Close enough? More or less. All right,
correct,
so again, thanks firefighters, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. We're proud of you. At this time, we provide an opportunity for the public to address the city council on any agenda item or during the hearing visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the city secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to the council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. Is anyone present who would like to speak on a work session agenda item? We did not have anybody. Seeing there's no one registered to speak, we will now recess to the regular session and convene to work session with a report from the city manager. I think we're back on track now. City Manager Ford.
No report tonight, because all I had was the introduction of the fire chief. So what we're going to do, if it's all right, we're going to move right into work session 508, which is discussion of the city manager's proposed fiscal year 25 operating budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Blue Kostelix, our CFO and Assistant City Manager, to intro the presentation.
Do I need to announce that? We will now recess the regular session and convene to work session.
You're good.
Good. All right. And Bradley and Blue. All right, Blue.
Manager. It's great to be with you, Mayor and Council. Very, very pleased to be able to put this budget in front of you for your consideration, for your discussion. Let us kind of see what's on your mind after we give a brief update on what's been going on with this budget process. But Mayor and Council, I've been here for about a month now, and it's been quite a fast, rapid month getting into this budget process. So. First and foremost, I really want to recognize the staff that has done this work, and behind the scenes, we have Julie Richards and Samantha Pogue. They have been 2 pivotal key members of this team that have really done a lot of the legwork to get us to where we are today. We couldn't have done this without them. They stepped into a very difficult situation, and they have exceeded expectations and been able to put something very special together for you.
And Julie's on brand tonight with it being Independence Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
She got the red, white, and blue on. She's ready to go.
With that,
Mayor, Council, get into it. Give you a little bit of a roadmap overall. What we want to kind of do is set the stage of why we're going the direction we are, kind of a little bit of an economic forecast. Very brief, very generic, but then talk about fiscal year '24, the current fiscal year that we're in, what we've gotten done so far, what we plan to get done. Then go into our fiscal year '25 budget, the creation, the approach, the actual budget itself, and then we will talk about some of the future strategies that we have for Waco as a whole, what we see coming up and coming down the line. So starting first with the economic forecast, really looking at a couple of what we're going to call tailwinds. The gross domestic product in this area, really backing out 2020, what you've been over the last few years, 10 years for certain. You've been on a steady, gradual increase in gross domestic product. It's been a great stabilizer for this economy. Businesses continue to grow and put out product. The second is the economic sector overview, and there's a lot of numbers and a lot of colors on this page, but really what you see is absolute stability in your economy. So over the last 10 years, you haven't seen one industry really die off or one come into power that kind of overplays the sector. So a lot of diversification really leads to that stability within. So if there are downturns in one sector, another can really keep us afloat. So good little tailwinds for you here in this economy. Then moving into what we're going to call a little bit of a crosswind, because this is a good news, bad news. And it's not so bad. It's just a cautionary tale. So your unemployment rate continues to decline here in Waco, in this area, much lower than the Texas average and the U.S. average over the next few years. So we are looking good in that area. However, the cautionary on that is if you look to the right, the median household income, prior to this 2023, you saw a lot of growth, rapid growth, 4.2% average growth rate over those almost 10 years. However, what we're seeing now and what we forecast out is a little bit of a slowdown in that. So something that we need to watch as we are putting budgets together, looking at services for our citizens and what we can be able to provide for what our residents can afford. And then we're going to go to the headwind. This is the major one that really speaks to why we think what we think in this next year's budget and really the forecast going forward. So if you're looking at this, really the green bars, just simply where the CPI-U is and where we forecast it to be. The purple line and that yellow line are really what we need to consider in this. So you look at prior to 2021, you had a large gap between the personal per capita income year-over-year change, far exceeding the CPI percent change. What this tells you is there's a potential for a lot of our residents to be able to have some discretionary income. So you're going to see a lot of economic boom during these times. However, in that 2021, when inflation started rising and our wages here, per capita income, kind of stayed stable to starting to decrease over those years, started to get a little bit concerned because that's when your buying power effectively becomes minimized significantly. What we saw during these times in the economy is a lot of people who had over those last few years a lot of savings built up, a lot of revolving credit capability. They continued to spend, but now what we're seeing with the inflation where they are, everything coming to fruition is people are out of savings, people are out of the ability to grab onto short-term loans or revolving credit. People are tapped out. So now what you have is the CPI, the percent change year over year, still exceeding their per capita income. When that happens, people have less buying power. And that's when you start to see some of your revenue starting to decline. So in our case, that hits us very hard in sales tax, which is one of the primary drivers of our general fund. Allows us to be able to pay for quite a few of the services that we pay for. That just declines our revenues. Also, on the flip side of that income statement, you start looking at our operations, and our operations, we're not immune to inflationary pressures. everything is costing us more, so we're trying to do more with less. And what we see in this forecast is those two numbers aren't really starting to come back together until fiscal year '26. So we have a couple of years where we need to really hone in and focus and align our strategic objectives with the services that we can provide.
Well said, Blue. Council, this is my fourth budget to put in front of you. And it's one of those moments each year that I do look forward to, because I get to grab the mic and talk about a little bit about where we've been, but also where we're headed. And I think Blue paints a picture that we'll be reaffirming throughout the remainder of the slides of we're in a different season than my last three budget presentations. Those presentations were filled with new additions, new programs, new people, valuable things that the council invested in. And this year we're going to use some new language with words such as reductions or leaner operations. The budget team started me off with the slogan of getting the job done, and I really appreciate that. It's kind of the theme for the recap of 2024, but I am going to take us on a little detour, because I think there's maybe a better slogan out there from that theme. I'm going to take us down a little red dirt road to a theme of, substitute the theme of it's been a hell of a year. And if anybody knows Red Dirt music, Parker McCollum, it's a famous song of his. And he was actually here in Touchdown Alley earlier this year. So I'm going to go with that theme for my wrap-up of 2024. And it really has been a remarkable year. In culture and recreation, I don't know that we'll have a year as good as we've had for quite some time. We had the opening of the airport terminal renovation project, which is just a phenomenal piece of art in itself. If you haven't flown Waco lately, you need to get back out there and see it. Absolutely. And touch and feel it. We had the opening of the Foster Pavilion, a new spot for entertainment in downtown, as well as 7 different projects around it that gave Paul a few more gray hairs. We hosted what really became the national epicenter for the 2024 eclipse at Touchdown Alley, and in Waco fashion, we said 1 4-minute experience wasn't enough, and so we had a whole week-long celebration of edutainment and STEAM and music and community. And then, of course, we're about 5 weeks away from unveiling to the public our penguins from South Africa. It's been an amazing year in culture and recreation. Public safety-wise, I don't know, did anybody stay? Well, there's a couple of folks that can carry the message back. We had, when people call 911, it's the worst day of their life, typically. And over 100,000 times, we sent out police or fire or both in responses and managed situations that were the worst days of people's lives, made them feel safer, and in reality, they were safer. And they carry an honor that should make you proud as their city council. Additionally, there's individual situations the council's been made aware of at the animal shelter. You've had people come to hearing of visitors and talk about the animal shelter, but I want to take a minute to brag on them, because I've been your city manager for 48 months now. This month is my 48th month. And every one of those months, they've been at above 90% live exit rate, which is the national standard for a no-kill shelter. And for this past year, they've been at 93%. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens with your investment in the people and the tools to get the job done, and it happens through their work, and I'm proud of them. Additionally, and we'll talk through a bullet point here in a minute, in a few slides, but we've got 3 new apparatus on order for our new chief to put into service, in addition to those 2 new fire stations. Utilities, public works, solid waste. these, at times, are some of the unsung heroes, are people that go out every day and make it happen, producing more than 10 billion gallons of treated water for the region. That's an economic development driver that I don't think people understand how significant it is. And even better, we treat 7.4 billion gallons of wastewater. That's also important. You got to have both. And then we'll talk about some of the projects that are underway in solid waste, and I want you to keep this in your mind. They're doing two really large projects right now, the landfill and the transfer station. Two projects at the same time at which they have to pick up trash to thousands of customers every day, and they're doing that at a 98.4% clip of picking up that trash on time. Those are the folks that are serving you every day, wearing the Waco logo every day, doing a great job. And then behind the scenes, we've got a whole host of folks that are internal service related. We went out and hunted more than $30 million of federal and state grants this year, received $30 million worth of state and federal grants, also administering them appropriately, which is also important. Computer network uptime, we wouldn't have George on the call tonight if it wasn't for our IT team. We were 99.8% uptime on network and capabilities, and I know Mike Seawright wants to get that to 100, and someday he will, but hopefully the 0.2% doesn't happen tonight, and Councilmember Chase can stay on the call with us.
He's still there.
In HR, and we've reported on this a few times to the council, you know, a couple years back, it took us about 120 days to hire an employee. From the time it went vacant to the time we got a new person in the seat. Missy and her team, as well as other departments, have worked that number down almost in half at this point. It's at 63 days to fill a position, and I'm really pleased to report that those positions are being filled with more and more diverse individuals that reflect the community. Additionally, a shout out to the finance team on reaffirming the AA+ bond rating, which brings significant value in terms of our interest carry cost, and puts us on the same level as the United States government at this point, one notch below AAA. Lots to be proud of. It's been a heck of a year. As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna use some different language as we look forward to FY 2025. I'm not gonna talk new programs. We're even decreasing the number of positions in the upcoming budget, not increasing, which is a first in quite a few years. So instead of adding, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're captaining this ship of ours. Blue talked about some of the crosswinds and even headwinds, and we've seen those things, those clouds kind of developing for about 10 months. So we're ahead of the storm in some ways. We've battened down the hatches and we're starting to turn the ship to try and skirt the storm instead of heading right into it. And that's good governance. And that's what you and our public expect of us, because we recognize the 2 to 3 year trend of lackluster revenue growth, and we're already working to address it. So first off, we had some practical challenges. The team at the table and behind me is, other than Paul and I, completely different, new. That presented a challenge, but also an opportunity in that we were able to pull resources from other departments, other talented individuals, and collaborate with our department heads in a unique way that I think as we walk through this budget you'll appreciate, because it took every department putting in cuts and reductions in their non-personnel items to meet the balanced budget objective. So I think it produced a superior product, frankly. Now, to continue with the storm kind of analogy, and since we're going to have an active hurricane season, it looks like, it takes 3 things to form a hurricane. Aaron, this is for you. I'm teaching you, Aaron.
Aaron, you taking notes? And move.
Three things.
He's munching.
It takes warm water. It takes moist air. And it takes low upper level winds. And you get those three things happening at the same time, you can get a big hurricane. For our storm, it takes kind of three things, Blue's already alluded to build this storm that we think is going to last a couple years. And that's property tax growth that's much below our 5-year trailing average. So we're going to have limited property tax growth. Our sales tax growth has already flattened, and we expect it will remain in the 1 to 2% increase. And then the inflationary pressures that Blue mentioned earlier, those three ingredients, if you liken it to a hurricane or a big storm, are all present and influencing, creating the challenge for this year's budget. Fortunately, thus far, through the work of the team that Blue highlighted and our department directors, we're going to propose a budget that maintains service levels. It maintains what I feel like are our obligations to competitively pay our employees, and it ensures that we can continue forward on those important capital improvement projects that you've already established as priorities and already announced to your constituents. To do that, we really took a deep dive on expense control, particularly as it related to non-personnel spending. So where could we cut back on travel? Where could we make reductions in non-personnel spending? I'll report in a minute. I think the number was north of $7 million of spending reductions year over year. Additionally, we did early in 2024 freeze and even remove some vacant positions. We, as a group, department leadership, city management, the whole team looked at where can we go without some of our vacant positions, and froze those or even reduced those out of the budget. Additionally, we looked at our rate projections, updated rate projections on water, sewer, solid waste, drainage, so that we could effectively balance over the course of a number of years the capital improvement program and not have a large increase in one year that we could smooth out over a number of years. And I think you'll find in the upcoming slides that it's thoughtful about the income gap that Blue covered early in his presentation. We recognize that costs are going up fast, incomes are going up slower than that, and we have a need to be aware of that as a government. So let's talk about some highlights of this year's budget. Putting some numbers to my comments here. We are proposing in the manager's filed budget to maintain our tax rate at 75.5 cents per 100 valuation. That is the same rate as we currently have, and it represents the lowest rate that we've had in 16 years. It would be the first budget I've filed that does not include a tax rate reduction. So we're 3 for 4. Balanced budget approach, as I mentioned, we reduced $7.6 million in non-personnel expenses versus our current adopted budget. That wasn't by accident, and it shows in the general fund at a summary view, we're actually proposing a general fund expense cumulative total lower than the current adopted budget by $1.2 million, which I'll talk about some of the investments we made in our people on the next slide that we're able to accomplish those two numbers mainly on the back of the $7.6 million of savings. We're asking for all the needs the departments had for new additions and new services. We're asking to delay those for consideration until April of 2025, after which we'll know a little more about our property tax situation, because we've not actually received, as Paul will highlight here in a moment, we've not actually received the tax roll from MCAT and won't for a few more weeks. We are honoring the operational reserve that's in our financial management policies of 28%. We're actually budgeting that at 30%. A key highlight that we discussed at our budget and audit meeting recently on outside agencies, I've budgeted the current amount in the current year, the $3.3 million that we discussed. That's the number I've got in the budget for this upcoming year. The outside agencies asked for about $1.2 million more, but I've budgeted at their current level, but I've not provided individual allocations just yet. We need to do that collaboratively and together. Additionally, and Paul will walk through this in detail, the combined utility bill that people get each month, we're proposing to increase $7.38 per month. That total bill will still keep us below the 2021 rate, the cumulative rate of inflation from 2021. Sounds like I got some music. Somebody's Googling Parker McCollum right now. The budget does honor our long-term commitments that the council and management have made. For instance, we're in year 2 of our police and fire contracts, our labor agreements with police and fire. They're 3 years long, and they basically had a 3-year window to get us to market rates of pay for each of those departments. And it takes more investment than we're able to give to our non-civil service employees. We're honoring those agreements. About a 7.2% increase in police and fire compensation are contemplated in this budget. And the dollar figure there is, and you'll track it all the way through, those are additions to the budget that we've been able to manage. Additionally, on non-civil service compensation, we are proposing a 3% increase, which is about $2.7 million of investment. Health insurance, wouldn't surprise anybody that health insurance costs are much above the rate of inflation. We saw that again this year. Was not able to continue the trend of the city picking up the increase 100% on the city side of the ledger. We're actually sharing the increase with the employees this year, meaning that part of their 3% raise will go to increased health care costs. They'll share in that burden alongside the city. I have budgeted for an increase to the WEDMAC contribution. I feel like that's a long-term commitment that we've made. And in the upcoming year, our annual contribution will be $4.35 million, and that will be matched by the county as well. And a new element, somewhat new, newer council members won't necessarily remember this, but some that have been on for a while will. Historically, the general fund has subsidized operations in the airport fund. Over the last 4 years, we've had CARES funding from the federal government that allowed us to not have to subsidize the airport fund. CARES has gone away, right? It's over, which means we had to budget for a $1.2 million increase in subsidy that heads over to the airport fund. All that was accomplished within the current tax rate of 75.5 cents and an overall decrease of total expenditures by $1.2 million because our departments and the budget team came together and made those non-personnel cuts that I mentioned earlier. So a headline of, no reductions to our core city services were required. We took what I would classify as the low-hanging fruit in order to get a budget that you can be proud of. Now, I wanted to talk for a few minutes, I referred to these earlier, about You know, we're not pulling back on any of the projects that you have previously authorized us and funded us to do. So 2025 will also be a great year because you've invested so much in your capital improvement program and facilities development work. So I'm going to walk through a few of the projects real quick that you'll be celebrating at over the course of 2025. First off, I referred to these earlier, you know, solid waste is doing a remarkable project to establish a new regional landfill and transfer station, spending about $38 million to ensure we have a place to put our trash come mid next year when our existing landfill is full. We have Fire Station 15, which is, the steel has gone up on Panther Way and Ritchie Road, be done by March 2025, another approximately $6 million investment in Fire Station 15. We have the $65 million worth of infrastructure work, water, sewer, streets, going on in the industrial park to support multiple new businesses coming to Waco that represent well over $1 billion worth of capital investment. When you think about the GDP slide that Blue showed, and it was $15 billion GDP, and we have companies coming in that represent $1 billion to $1.5 billion worth of capital investment. Those will move the needle as we look into 25 and 2026. Additionally, I mentioned the 3 fire apparatus and 3 brush trucks earlier that we're putting into service in this upcoming year. That will take our frontline fleet that our firefighters rely on every day from an average age of almost 11 years just a few years ago to 3.6 years in the upcoming year. They are in great equipment because of the investments you've made. Now, I can't talk about big projects and not mention Council District 2's favorite project at Casey Park. Design will be complete in just a couple of months. We'll be under construction in May of 2025. This project's funded, remains funded, and will be complete by July 2026. And following in the footsteps of the airport renovation, we're doing a really exciting project, and it's going to be culturally relevant, filled with art, and Hispanic themed, and full access for all abilities in the park. It's going to be a really special place. For a couple of years, the council's been requesting China Spring Park, and they funded it. You funded it last year. Design will be complete in September, again with a March 2025 start date, and be done 1 year later. Be the first major city investment in China Spring that people can touch and feel. Our first major investment out there. The relocation of Station 4 is still in the budget, still planned for. It's under design currently. You'll see some of the updated renderings here. It's going to have a Spanish mission themed architectural style. It's going to fit really nicely with the LaSalle overlay and what we're trying to start in the rebirth of LaSalle Avenue. Construction intended to start in May of 2025, be done in 2026. Additionally, we have the STEAM Center, which, thankful for our partnerships at the federal level, we've been able to put forth a budget of $13.8 million to do a full renovation of the inside of the Bledsoe Miller STEAM Center, which is under design currently. We'll also have some exterior work, updating the park and the facade. Under design currently with construction to start in January of 2025. A priority that's been discussed for several years will come to fruition in January 2026. In the budget still. New animal clinic and hospital at the animal shelter in the budget. Design work will end in June of 2025. Construction will start shortly thereafter, and we will have a new clinic and hospital building in operation by mid-2026. Made to be an opportunity, thankfully, in the council's support in property acquisitions over the last year. Wouldn't be possible but for the moves you've been making. This one a little more in-depth in a later presentation. We also have the Phase 1 downtown strategic roadmap built into the rates and budget of the upcoming year. Again, we'll have Tom Bach join us for a few minutes after this presentation to discuss this in depth. And Paul has promised me, so we put it on the slide, that we'll get started on the railroad quiet zones in 2025 from Peach to 13th Street. Project that has a lot of hair on it due to its nature of involving our friends at the railroad. Additionally, another project with a lot of hair on it is the reconstructed Riverwalk from Webster to Baylor Law. $25 million investment in improving the 4-decade-old Riverwalk. We'll go out to bid in 2024 with construction starting October 2024. And those improvements will certainly make for Councilmember Borderood's walk over to City Hall much nicer. But will really be a step ahead in how we tell stories through our capital improvements, as we tell the story of what used to be on those grounds in A.J. Moore and Sandtown. And last but not least, we have a $17 million investment in Bullhide Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's an expansion of the plant, roughly a doubling of the plant, which will start construction in the upcoming budget year in July 2025, and that'll take us a couple of years to get finished. But that's an important piece of the infrastructure puzzle as Waco and the region continue to grow west and southwest. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Mr. Kane to walk us through some of the details.
All right, Mayor and Council, I'm going to walk you through some of the major funds here. Some of this information you have seen at previous times. I'll surely miss. Yes, please. All right, next. All right. We've talked about some of this in detail, but for those who might be watching and just as an update on some of the latest work, here's an income statement for the general fund. The general fund is the city's largest fund. Typically, all of the services that folks generally think of from the city, primarily police and fire being the biggest, come from this fund. On the revenue side, taxes, which is the first line, includes a number of things actually, but property and sales tax are in that. Total property tax revenues based on our estimates for valuations, which we'll talk about in a second, will increase on the operational side about $2 million with sales tax. That'll take us up to about $91.7 million. Sales tax increases about $1.4 million to $56.5. The remaining changes in the taxes category includes things like pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, and franchise fees from franchise utilities. The changes in the other category of revenues from other funds, overhead and indirect charges as well. Looking at the expense side, Bradley mentioned the changes to salaries and wages and benefits. All of those are reflected or reflect the compensation changes that Bradley discussed previously. And we've also updated our overtime budgets, primarily in police and fire, to reflect actual costs. We've been underfunding overtime for a number of years now, so we've corrected that. And you'll see significant changes in other operating expenses of that includes about $3.3 million, and that's what Bradley alluded to earlier when he talked about funding for some mid-year programs. So we do have some money in the budget for that. Looking forward, changes and transfers out. Let me go back. Sorry. Changes and transfers out reflect some changes, reductions to other funds that the general fund supports, such as engineering, health department, zoo, golf, and the street capacity program. There's increases for street maintenance, park performance, and rolling stock in there as well. but we do have a net reduction there. Overall, general fund expenses, as Bradley mentioned, about 1.2 million lower than the adopted budget, and our fund balance is strong at 6.75 million, 30%. Overall, 30% of revenues, with the policy being 28%. So this slide here looks at our taxable values, and as council is aware, each April to May we get a preliminary tax roll from the district, and then from that we extrapolate out forecasts of what we think the values are going to be going forward. So here you see in blue at left, the preliminary values for 21, 2, 3, and 4, and then the certified values that come out July 25th, and then the budget value, which is a slight adjustment from the certified value, primarily taking into account exemptions, and the majority of that changes from tax increment funds that are taken out to produce the budget number. So you see, if you look at 2023, we're at 14.485 million. We use this trend analysis as kind of the best we can do to project what we think will happen in the future. We're looking at about 15.085 million in taxable value for this particular budget. And as Bradley mentioned, when the roll comes out, we will make whatever adjustments are necessary. For example, if values are higher than we anticipate and some of the state law requirements, parameters kick in, which cause us to lower the rate to fall within the state law with regard to voter approved tax rate and those limitations, we'll certainly do that in the upcoming budget. But as for now, we're budgeting about $15 million for budgetary purposes, or $15 billion, I'm sorry, in value for next year. Next. This slide shows you what that means in terms of revenue. So it's the valuation increase is about 4.1 million overall. The total revenue is going up about $4.5 million on the general fund side. That includes both operations and debt. In the green, you see the operational or maintenance and operations rate. It's actually, that rate will come down a little bit. The overall net increase on the general fund operations side is about $2 million, 2.2%. The INS requirement is going up by $2.5 million, and so you'll see a corresponding increase in that rate, but overall, the tax rate stays the same. Next, please. Sales tax payments, this is something we've talked about with council previously. This kind of reflects some of the information that Blue covered previously. We had really strong growth in that period of May 21 to April of 2022 in sales tax growth, and it's certainly begun to flatten, and you see the yellow is the 36-month rolling average, the red is the 12-month rolling average. You can see how those spread out as that high growth happened, and then now they're coming back together as those revenues begin to flatten. Again, just some of the trends that we look at with regard to sales tax and how to forecast future sales tax growth. And we're flatter now. For those of you who are into graphics and statistics, the slope is declining now faster than it has in a number of years. So certainly paying attention to that. Next. This looks at kind of taking that information and showing where our June reports are, and those are shown in yellow year over year, what we've actually gotten in property tax and sales tax revenues in the month of June, and then the year-to-date numbers. So you can see year-to-date, 23 versus 24, we're about $500,000 ahead of that. We then can extrapolate out what we think the actual will be, or what the actual was, and then what the budget will be going forward. We're looking at about 56.5 in 2025. Again, a fairly conservative estimate for reasons previously discussed. This slide shows a couple of things here. Left is an all expense. It takes the numbers that Bradley talked about earlier, and the total numbers at $202.51 million in budget for the general fund. On the left is all of those, that total allocated by department. And then at right is the same thing, except it excludes the personnel costs. And you'll see the bottom line at right is about 7.6 million reduction overall in those non-personnel costs, about an 8.5% reduction overall in non-personnel related expenses. Much of that is in transfers, as we talked about earlier. However, you'll see, for example, in the police department, about $500,000 of 4.13% reduction overall. In the police department budget for non-personnel items, most all departments making adjustments for that, and essentially allowing us to do all the things that Bradley talked about in terms of continuing our obligations and funding our obligations going forward. So a lot of good work from the budget team and from the departmental leadership to make that happen. Let's talk about some of the major utility fund statements. This is for the water fund. We're projecting about $74 million in revenue, about a 10% increase over the prior year. The bulk of that's in that charges for service line item, and those are the charges that the city charges customers for per gallon consumption, fixed rate cost, as well as our commercial and industrial customers charges for meter size and other things. So you'll see that increase there. So the bulk of it is in that charges for service. It's about a 9.7% increase across the board. However, the average residential user, which is about 8,000 a month, will see about a 1.3% increase. There's a little small transfer in, and that comes from the TIF to help support some of the industrial park work that we talked about earlier in terms of the water and sewer infrastructure out in the business park. On the expenditure side, expenditures projected to increase about 7.5%, $4.8 million. You see the salaries and increases. The salary, wages, and employee benefits are up in this fund, but you'll see in some of the other funds reflecting the compensation increases. There's also some additional staff that we've added here, moved over actually from the IT department to help fund a new software system to run our water and sewer operations, and those positions will be taken in over the next couple of years as there's attrition in those positions, we'll shift those in. So we will not be a net increase overall for the next few years. Another big thing that's happened here, you'll see in the 64 maintenance account, as well as 67 other operating expenses, some increases there. We have moved pavement work for water and sewer lines. Traditionally, what had happened in the past is when the water and sewer department dug up a street and replaced a water or sewer line, fixed a leak, that kind of thing, they would do their work, and then the engineering or public works department would come along behind them and do the street repair on top of that cut. We've consolidated that all to within the water department now, so the water department can control that process from start to finish. It helps us with our communication between departments. It also, we think, will make it more efficient over time, so we have made that adjustment going forward. And the other thing you'll see in all of the utility funds is an increase in transfers out. And utility funds, unlike the general fund, the operating funds transfer money to a debt service department with our debt service fund within each of these larger funds. And so you'll see increases throughout for those things. One of the things that certainly you'll note here, where the policy minimum is in terms of working capital or unassigned fund balance for this fund, and where we are in relation to it, we're well above policy. That certainly will probably raise some questions. There's a couple of things to keep in mind here throughout as we talk about all of these utility funds. The additional amount of money that we're above, on the water side, there's so much volatility in rates. You want to have a good, healthy fund balance. Wet years, dry years, those kinds of things. The other things, there's some other things that we're going to be working through over the next year. One is, as everyone's aware, the legislature continues to restrict how capital projects are financed. And so we are looking at doing some things that will get us out of that questionable area. For example, utility funds can issue revenue bonds, which have a different rating structure than our typical debt. It requires rate coverage a little bit higher than what we have now. It requires fund balance requirements that we think are going to be a little bit higher than what we have now. So we're building towards that. I think the other thing I would say, and this is true for all of these funds, all the utility funds, in addition to the revenue requirement or the revenue bond issue, the other thing that we're also going to be looking at is using some shorter term financing in those utility funds that allows us to fund contracts or projects as they come up and then replenish them with bonds later. The value of this is certainly, how much money you have in the market at a certain time, and you take advantage of rates. You also don't have to sell a whole lot of bonds or debt and keep it in the bank and spend it, draw it down over time. If you have short-term financing, you can address some of those projects that are multi-year projects in a little bit different way. So there's a lot of reasons here for us going forward. Over the next year, you will see us come forward with a financial advisor and talk about some of these things and how we're going to utilize these funds. Ultimately, the surplus money can be used to buy down future sales. For example, it can be used to lower the rate. It can be used to lower the amount of debt you sell generally. So there's lots of options here. And over the next year, you will see us come forward with a CIP plan that includes addressing some of these surplus amounts. So on the wastewater side, similar story. We do have increases in charges for service as well. This also includes the WMR's operation, which includes our customer cities. So there'll be rate increases across the board there. The average homeowner will see about a 5% increase on the wastewater side. We'll talk about some more of that in some detail here in a second. Maintenance is up, as you can imagine, as we continue to work through the costs that we have as facilities age. Certainly the central plant is aging, and we have some investment to make there. And you'll see transfers out higher here as well, reflecting additional debt service costs going forward. On the solid waste side, this is something that was alluded to earlier with regard to the transfer station and landfill. Opening up a new transfer station, you really have to run opening up a new landfill, you have to run two landfills at once. So there's additional equipment costs, personnel costs associated with that. The transfer station is new, and it will require additional staff and equipment to run it. So on the expense side, that's where you see the majority of these increases are associated with that expense. Debt as well has gone up on the solid waste side. The charges for service on the residential side of solid waste, a few years ago, the council approved a plan to increase rates about $1.41 a month for about a 4-year period. We're in the second year of that going forward here, so you'll see some of that reflected in the charges for service revenues there. Drainage fund is our newest fund. There's a 25-cent per month increase in the cost for a residential equivalent unit, and that feeds across all commercial and residential customers. Most of the expenses here are in line with where they are now, no major changes. And again, we have a fund balance here that we'll be keeping an eye on as we develop the CIP for next year and do bond sales for next year. Let's talk about the average monthly bill in some detail here, going on to the next slide. So at left is what was actually paid per average customer, and this is a customer who uses about 8,000 gallons of water, and their sewer bill is based on a 5,000 gallon per month cost. So you'll see back in 2021, water, sewer, and solid waste was about $111 a month in 2021. So if you move ahead to where we are now, that same cost inflated, as we've seen inflation has hit hard the last few years, that would be around $137.57 for just those three expenses. Since that time, we have added the drainage fee, and this year we're proposing to add a street fee. With the addition of the drainage fee and the street fee, we're still below what the utility bill was in 2021. And again, trying to keep that as a measure going forward. So when we talk with customers, the monthly bill that they will receive in 25 is actually a little less than what they were paying in 2021, adjusted for inflation. So the city is keeping, thank you for whoever did that. Thank you for that. So you see the overall increase is less than where we were, or where we would be inflation adjusted from 2021. You see at the bottom of the screen the percentage increases for water, wastewater, drainage, solid waste, and then the street fee. So we're at about $7.38 a month more than the current year, which is about a 5.7% increase The last slide that I have to speak with you about is the street fee, something that we talked about last year and had intended to roll out last year. However, there were some issues that arose, and ultimately the city manager recommended that council suspend the fee for a year, and council did that in November of last year. So we did revise the methodology and reduce the cost of the fee. Last year, we proposed a $10 a month fee. This year, we're at $2 per month. That's about an 80% reduction. Non-residential accounts are essentially charged based on their equivalency to the amount of traffic generated by the non-residential property as compared to a single-family unit. So they're essentially measured in the number of houses that they're equal to, right? So the non-residential customers saw a reduction of between 45% and 99%, which is amazing, on the total amount that we had planned for last year. So we made substantial adjustments in how the fee's calculated. We reduced the per month fee overall and made some substantial changes here that it'll generate about $2.7 million a year, which supplements our street maintenance program, which is about a $21.5 million a year program, 2.7 from the fee and 18.8 or so from the general revenues. We are launching some public information actually tonight. It'll be online tomorrow. Web page that you see here, and a phone number and email for people to give us comments back on the fee. There will also be a map online that people can go to their individual property, click on that property, and see how the fee is calculated and what their new fee would be. And again, we've couched all of this in proposed language that ultimately council has not voted to do this as part of the city manager's proposed budget. Council will have to act on it, ordinances and other things in the future. So right now it's a proposed fee, and we've tried to make all of our communication with the public on this within that context that is proposed and council has not voted. It is substantially different than what was proposed in the past, and we will be communicating specifically with some of our larger ratepayers under this system with a direct mail letter telling them about the fee and its recalculation and what their projected fee will be. So we'll be doing that over the next few months. And again, the council will have the ultimate decision on this. There'll be an ordinance at a future meeting in August and in September, I believe, should council wish to go forward with this. So it is included in the manager's proposed budget today. And with that, I'll wrap up my portion and turn it back over to Bradley.
All right. So let's talk about the future for a few minutes. And I think pictures are a good way to kind of tell you where we're headed. So 2025, this budget we've put together, I would say represents this guy going through the apple orchard, finding the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff, which I would say is easy to find. You didn't have to work too hard to get it. 2026, it's going to look a little harder. We're going to have to go up in the middle of the tree. Not much will be within reach. The easy pickings are gone. We'll have to conduct more work to create the impact necessary to bring you a balanced budget that doesn't hurt. And then 2027, if the projections that Blue showed hold true, we're going to be way up in that tree. There'll probably be no easy choices. The things we'll need to cut or think about will be hard to reach, and we're going to really have to spend some effort to figure out how to bring you a budget that doesn't cut something that's important to you. So here's kind of what I'm thinking for the 3-year window. Assuming that revenue is flat or grows only slightly. You know, I want to focus on the employees as our top line. We cannot do anything but for the 1,700 people that get up every day and make this work. We've got contractual obligations. We do need to still stay competitive on salaries and wages. And we need to invest in our people and allow them to grow in the organization and have careers in the organization. We're going to have to manage our tax rate a little differently than we have over the last couple of years. We've been shifting pennies from our maintenance and operations over to serve debt, the INS portion of the rate, the interest and sinking side of the rate. We're going to have to moderate that move and maybe even cease it, which could result in less, or will result in less capital improvement dollars for our projects down the road. Requires us to consider, as Paul mentioned, some short-term financing tools. It's likely going to require some hard decisions on prioritization within your CIP, in which over the last couple of years, we've been able to do streets, parks, facilities, all the things. In future years, we're probably going to have to prioritize simply around your priorities of streets. And if we need to pivot, that's fine, but the dollars are going to be relatively shrinking, which will cause you to have to prioritize a little differently. We'll also look at public-private partnerships that allow us to move projects up if the private market's willing to partner with us. We're going to have to look at cost recovery on the left side of this chart. We're going to have to look at lower subsidies in our funds as well. We're going to have to get into some considerations that might make you a little uncomfortable. Ultimately, your decision, but we're going to have to bring you some new ideas. For instance, about 100 cities in Texas work through the insurance companies of non-residents to charge back to the insurance companies for fire and hazmat responses. Currently, we don't do that. We go out on a hazmat call. Our residents and our businesses pay for that service of the fire department, and there's no bill sent to, say, the folks that got in the accident. Well, there's about 100 cities in Texas that have now said, we want to go and charge the insurance company in those responses, which, is probably an uncomfortable topic, but that's the kind of consideration that we're going to start having about how do we continue to run the government in a limited revenue environment. Additionally, we're going to have to start talking about service reductions in the 3-year window and potentially program elimination. That's not something that government's really good at, but there are going to be opportunities for programs that are no longer seen as viable or responsive to the needs of the community. We'll be bringing you those conversations so that we can talk about them and make those decisions. And then finally, a response that we're already working on in some regards is outsourcing. We've had the conversation recently about convention center operations. We intend to move forward on that late in 2024, early in 2025. But there are other functions within the city operation that could be considered for outsourcing, including portions of our inspections program, construction inspections in particular. Additionally, there's project development, project management that could be potentially outsourced as a cost control measure, but also as an effectiveness measure. Those are some of the realities and considerations that you'll start to hear or see more ideas over this next year to 2 year as we seek to continue serving our residents well into the future and working higher into that proverbial tree that I showed you. And with that, I'm going to let, I think, Blue talk calendar. Is that right? Or is it Paul? Paul's talking calendar. But before I let him talk about it, the thing that this meeting symbolizes is the turning over of the budget, the manager's budget, turning it over to the council for its deliberation. And so you've got well over a month now to get back with me, to ask questions of me, to get the details you need and the answers you need to guide us towards an effective budget for next year. Paul?
As Bradley mentioned, today's July the 2nd, so we'll meet formally again with the council and start the last few flights of hurdles in this race, August the 6th. And we'll have all future council meetings, we'll have something on the work session agenda for staff and council to discuss the budget as recommended by the city manager. August the 6th, we'll be talking specifically about the certified tax roll, any kind of rate changes that were required based on that tax roll, and we'll have in the business session first reading of some of the ordinances that start this process. So we'll start in earnest on the 6th. We'll do a budget and audit meeting on the 13th. We'll walk through all of this again, take council's questions. In the interim between now and then, I expect there'll be a number of questions from council, so we're going to respond formally to those at both of these meetings. And then as we wrap up the year, August the 20th, that council meeting, again, more discussion. We'll set dates for the tax rate hearing and some of the other items. And then for your calendars and memory, don't forget August 27th will be a special call meeting where we'll have the formal public hearing on the proposed budget, and the budget adoption action will be that night as well. And then September 3rd, at the September 3rd meeting, that will be the final meeting on the tax rate and emergency reading of the tax ordinance as provided by law. So that kind of gets us through the rest of this process. And again, as Bradley mentioned, this is now the manager's recommended budget for you to consider and to ask questions over this interim as we move towards August 27th adoption. And I think that's the last slide. And there we have the Thinker Waco form, right? And that's what's the last one here. So we thank you for your time. Thank you for your working with us over the last few months. Thank you for your patience as we work through this process with a limited but very talented staff.
Thank you for y'all's great effort on this. I also appreciate not only the appropriateness of the pensive Waco icon there, but also that this tree has no fruit on it, which I do worry, given the metaphors. It's a little worrisome.
I will say, just a quick note, our tree slides didn't look right for some reason up there, but Assistant City Manager Holt helped us out in putting those together, and unfortunately it didn't turn out quite as well as we thought.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Ryan?
It's ours. Somehow between...
Are we cutting our artificial intelligence strike force this year as well?
That 725 bus is early that he just threw in.
Wasn't his fault. He did great work for us. Unfortunately, it just didn't look well.
He tried.
It didn't look as well.
He tried.
It was better than some of the other pictures that we had in the process.
Oh, man.
Good job, Ryan.
Any other questions or comments?
Just really quick, I want to say that, I appreciate all of the work that has gone into preparing this for us, sincerely, and I feel like the vibes have been a bit off in terms of the budget during this budget season as compared to previous years, and I acknowledge that, and I think it's well worn at this point to point out that we are bringing in less money year over year than we have for the last 4 or 5 years. I think that's important to note. With that, I would say as a challenge to staff and city manager's office and council as well, is to not lose sight of the fact that we still have a lot of opportunity to capitalize on, and to not hold so tightly to the fact that we have to remain conservative to be fiscally sound, but rather understanding that, I guess I should say, rather than getting really, really good at moving very, very slowly, maybe we should think about getting good at stopping quickly. So continuing to be aggressive in exploring projects to the point that we realize that they're not feasible, so that we're not missing out on opportunities that otherwise could work for us because of a feeling or a need to feel that we should be conservative in this time as we're projecting forward with less revenues. Just don't want to miss out on opportunities because we felt like we couldn't do it. So that's my my thoughts on the budget. Thank you guys for this presentation.
I just want to thank y'all. Not really, really happy, but I know you gave us the best that you could give us. And you're giving us a month to come up with questions. And at the Budget and Audit Committee, we had questions, and y'all are going to get those answers for us. So I'm going to wait and get those answers. But thanks, staff, for, this is not an easy budget to come up with. Bradley, thank you for coming up with your best and giving us options. And it's not always easy for council members to add fees, and it's not always easy for us to remove programs. But having said that, as council members, we have to do what's best for the city of Waco. Sure. So we will do what we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley, and staff for this presentation. I know that it has been an incredibly challenging time because of the fluidity of the finance department. See how we...
Well said.
But now that you have a strong team, you are tasked with offering a budget for a city in a time of uncertainty. And it's uncertain for everybody. So just like when you go into your local grocery store and you're like, how much I'm paying for milk? It's the same thing, except it's a whole city budget. Because the things that were once a price that you were accustomed to are no longer. And that's all things from staples to people. Because in order for, in this society, we've got to offer good money, beyond living wage plus, we'll say, in order to continue our consistency with being best in class. That takes effort, and that takes money, and it has to come from somewhere. Now, we had been on a utopic mountaintop for a minute. And the reality is if you, Jim, Mayor, you will speak to this with great authority, that in climbing mountains, you cannot go from mountaintop to mountaintop. You do have to come down. And that is the way life is. And so as we descend our mountain from the summit, we just have to do so strategically. We have to do so with intentionality, being people forward, because we don't, none of the things that you've put to us said a loss of active services for our community. We are committed to giving our residents the level best that we can. Now, there's some ways that we can do that differently. I mean, if you've lived, you know this all the time, you can't buy Cottonelle. Sometimes you have to go to the, okay. But we still gonna have what we need. And those are those choices that we make right now. I mean, we make human choices in this budget for our city because we are governing people. So everything that you have to do in your house is what we have to do in this house. So we have to make smart choices, and we have to know that stuff costs money, and be realistic in that things cost money, and how and what we're going to do to make it as, not gonna say painless, because I mean, it's reality, but with as little change as possible. Now, I don't know what tomorrow holds. There'll be maybe another mountaintop right there. And it's possible here. But what we're going to do in the meanwhile is make the best and most of what we have, make smart choices. We are all charged over this next month to ask hard questions, because there's some stuff that we do that probably doesn't need to happen. There's some strings that should be cut. There's some things that should be reassessed and reappointed. Because as we are now in a season of want, as opposed to a season of plenty, we change our approach. And, that is what we're charged to do. So, and I believe that this group of people, with that group of people, we can get it done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. Great presentation, guys. I do like the celebration of what happened in 2024. All of us council members were part of that, as well as staff and city management. So we appreciate that. It's time for, you know, some prudent fiscal management, which I think that we all have experience with. I like the way we're looking at the coming trends, the property tax growth, sales tax growth, and inflation. And studying those, Blue, I appreciate your putting that together, where we look at what's happening not only on a national level, but a local level, and how we can be looking at those trends that are national and how they relate to us in Texas and in Waco here in 2024 and 2025. So I like to thinking ahead. To follow the low-hanging fruit simile we have going here, metaphor. In my career as an investor, I've seen the whole apple orchard burned down and somebody drank all the cider. So, I mean, things are not that bleak here. We do have some growth, property tax growth. We do have sales tax growth. It's minimal and it's cresting, and I think it's good that we all take that into account. We're dealing with inflation headwinds, as is everybody, but we still will continue to deliver best-in-class services. I like that. We've made that a goal since I've been on council, and we'll continue to do that. No reductions in city services. Expense controls. I really admire the way that all of our middle management really bought into that. We are taking the salaries and benefits, making sure they're paid well, but that expense part, we have really made some admirable cuts there. It's not always easy to do. But when you look at the general fund, that basically, we think this year's going to end up at 204, and we're actually budgeting to lower than this year's to that 202 in the preliminary budget here. I think that's, again, an admirable move that you're managing, City Manager Ford. And I will say also that the last couple of years, as we've budgeted and as we have planned financially, we have the best reserves in the history of the city right now. Our cash reserves, we're holding excess cash reserves, which we'll start looking at how to implement and how to perhaps use some of those excess reserves in our future projects. We have a strong, as you pointed out, I mean, it started writing down the list of CIP projects, most of which are already funded, that we're in the middle of or in the completion stages of, and these are pretty large. All these are over 10 million, I think, and go to the landfill, the fire station, the public infrastructure, Floyd Casey Park, China Spring Park, the fire station number 4, the Steam Center, the Animal Clinic, the Riverwalk, the wastewater treatment plant. Just all those things that we have already in the queue based on prior budgeting planning. So I think we're in great shape here to finish those up. We're in great shape here in this year's budget. Again, this is preliminary. We all need to let it marinate here for the next 30 days and come back to Bradley and Paul and Blue with ideas. The third thing I wanted to say on not only do we have strong reserves and a lot of CIP work in process. Over the last couple of years, we've made a lot of intentionality around improved services and improved processes. We've invested in software and systems that I think this year, 2024, 2025, we will be implementing those, testing those in improved services that the city is providing, which it's not a dollar amount, but it's just the implementation of what we have planned for the last couple of years. So I feel good about that. Again, let's all take some time here this month to look this over, but great presentation. I can't let Blue get away here without talking about, I love the Gantt charts. I didn't see any Gantt charts, but I did see a quilt chart in there, which is, those are kind of a cutting edge deal too. I like the quilts. So anyway.
It'll do in a pinch. It'll kind of.
Yeah, if you can't get a Gantt, the quilt works for me. Anyway,
Y'all didn't tell
let's look at this the next month. We'll be talking about it in the next meeting. But again, appreciate everybody's efforts and just understanding what we have here and planning for next steps. Thanks.
Well, the good news is I believe that our next presentation has a Gantt chart.
Fix it, Jesus.
Get back to normal.
Hawk has a Gantt chart in his deck. So thanks, council, for your feedback, and I look forward to working with you to get us a budget on file and approved over the next few weeks. With that, would like to bring Director of Strategic Initiatives, Tom Bach, up. He has a couple of slides that we want to show on the resolution that's on your agenda. And Paul and I will stay down here for any questions that you have as well.
So Mayor, if we could read that part where we recess the work session for the business session, that would be wonderful.
We will now recess the work session and convene the business session. Is that what you want to do? Okay. I thought this was just a continuation of the operating budget, but.
Because it deals with
It's a separate resolution.
Okay. So we want to do the resolution right now and not after the, okay, so we'll now recess the work session, reconvene the regular session, and consider Resolution 2024-511.
Yes, sir, and Tom Bach's got a presentation in connection with that resolution.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to visit with you this evening. Glad to be back. The resolution in front of you pertains to the professional services scope associated with Phase 1A of the strategic roadmap that was presented and adopted at the June 18th council meeting. So this is an association. We have an existing pre-development agreement with our master developer, Hunt Development Group. The original contract scope and value was $325,000 to deliver the strategic roadmap. And this amendment focuses in on the professional services, including design and engineering for the Phase 1A enabling infrastructure. So key things to highlight about this resolution item. It's funded by currently available sources, so it is not debt funded. It doesn't project into the future or next year's budget to deliver these professional services. 48% comes from an existing economic development project fund that has been funding the services to date. 52% of this comes from eligible water and wastewater fund surpluses that are tied to those pieces of infrastructure in this design scope as well. And the resolution includes the option to reimburse from future bond proceeds as well. And so I included the spreadsheet here, not for graphic purposes, but I was told that I had to bring a spreadsheet to a spreadsheet party.
Gotcha.
It also does address the fact that the water and wastewater funds are where we're sourcing the additional 52% funding.
Tom, I don't know which mic they want you to get closer to, but I'm told that we want you closer to one of those mics.
I'll do this one. Is that all right?
Thank you. I'm not trying to make it hard on you. Somebody did legitimately ask me to do that.
Absolutely. Is this better? Test, test, test. Test, test. Test, test, test.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Is this the better one? All right. This is technical pressure. All right. So what are we getting out of this investment? We're being delivered a tangible product. So regardless of the process forward from this scope of services, we take away a set of construction documents that the city can make choices with. The first reward we get for this investment, along the way, we're going to have enough information to successfully compete for grants and legislative funding. We can't do that right now with just a conceptual plan or a strategic roadmap. We need a little more fidelity to the engineering side of things, and so this will help us get there quickly. Also, it's important to note that 40% of this development scope, it's tied to addressing initiatives of the 2023 Downtown Improvement Plan. So these are things that have been discussed and prioritized previously, and the strategic roadmap did a thoughtful job of trying to work with that work. The utility improvements, they respond to what was identified through this process as well, is that the downtown infrastructure, we have a capacity limitation, and we also have a significant amount of life cycle replacement that needs to take place. Much of this utility infrastructure went in the 50s and was built for the capacity needs of that time. Another note among these fees to consider is that this isn't the portion of the project where Hunt, as the master developer, gets any compensation. So their management of this design scope, their role is to keep us on track and on budget, managing a team of professional service providers. The biggest among those are engineering, planning, architecture, and landscape architecture. And among those team members, more than 40% of the fee that's paid to deliver these services goes to local team. And so the management controls in the agreement as well are important to highlight because there's no upfront payment. This isn't writing a single check for $12.3 million. It's progress payments just like all of our professional services contracts. It'll be invoiced monthly. And then part of the engagement process with this design phase is bi-monthly status updates to council. And between each of those will be public engagement meetings as well. So town halls, stakeholder engagement, info sessions. So there's going to be a lot of visibility and communication to how this is progressing. But those council touches are helpful for y'all in the fact that it allows you to have information necessary as additional opportunities to direct occur, such as key milestones like when you're considering the bond sale proposal in January. You'll want to know where we are in the process, how it's progressing, are we on schedule, are we on budget. At that point in the project, we're already able to project the billables to that date equate to about a third of the total contract value, so $4 million. So we expect to be on track, and we'll be able to give you an honest update bi-monthly leading up to that point. This also is a contract that features termination clauses with no backout fees. And so if for any reason we need to stop, just like Councilmember Ewing just mentioned, we can get good at stopping quickly if we need to. If this ends up being one of those situations, we pay for the services rendered and we can terminate the contract. The last thing in the contract management category to highlight is that, you discover things in the design and engineering phase. There's still a process of trying to understand what our utility network is under the ground. There's the stuff that's recent enough to know about. There's stuff that can be older than that that's not on a map. So as we discover things, there's also a 4% contingency baked into the contract amendment here. So following the standard procedures on any modification to the project scope greater than $50,000, we still bring back to discuss with you, but it gives that flexibility and assigns the funding to keep the project moving forward as appropriate. And as promised, here's that Gantt chart that is probably not entirely legible at this scale, but it's worth noting that between the red hash marks here, so the first one is today, and that kicks off a 12-month period to get us through construction documents for streets and utilities. That's really important for us to achieve within 12 months to prepare for a bidding process. But that bidding process would not initiate without council's full support and approval to move into the next stage. The portions that extend beyond that second red hash mark include the surface improvement. So the design development will be going on concurrently with construction documents for utilities and streets I just mentioned, but the park improvements, the final construction documents for that will continue afterwards, allowing for the necessary flexibility to keep the project on budget. If we encounter surprises in the utility or street design that cost more than what is currently anticipated for those scopes, the park improvements will be scaled to fit. So there's a lot of flexibility built into the approach to give y'all decision-making power. There are a number of approvals baked into the process along the way so that we can move nimbly, and that's also reflected in the approach with the budget. So with that, I know that's a crash course, but I'm happy to answer any questions associated with the contract.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the check-in points that are listed there because, this is a walking process that we have to make sure, is lockstep with our current and future goals. One of the thing that you mentioned that I want to just make sure goes on record is as we're having community conversations, I don't know that we've done as good a job in making sure, let's say if you have multiple, that one is Spanish speaking. Or that there's an access to an interpreter available. And I think we need to do a better job with that. And especially in something as pivotal as downtown at this project. So, yeah, I know we got to figure out how to pay for it. But I think that if we want to make sure that all of our community is speaking into this, they need to make sure that they can.
Absolutely.
Tom, when it says bi-monthly, is that the occurrence of twice a month or every other?
Well, now that you mention it, the intended interpretation is every other month we'd be coming to council with a work session, and that would be offset. Every other month we'd be on a similar schedule, but the intervening months would be engaging with a town hall or a public forum.
Great. That was my assumption. Just wanted to be clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
The only other thing that I would like to note as a question or a challenge or whatever it may be, as we are dispensing these funds for engineering, architecture, landscape architecture for phase one, I would ask and hope that, and I trust that we've selected a group that is mindful of this, that as much that we can pay for that is specific to phase one but general to the rest of the project, so that we're not incurring any additional expenses throughout the rest of the phases as we kick them off for these same sort of engineering needs, that we can sort of group into what we're paying for right now before we kick off phase one, so we're not doing duplicate work and paying for it twice. And I know every phase is a little bit different, but there's some form-based code stuff I'm sure that once it's established you can roll over, and just making sure that we are thinking soundly about that to save every dollar we can on this, and not doing it once for this project and running into the same thing for the next phase and the next phase and paying for it again.
Yeah,
all I got.
absolutely. That's a good point, and I hadn't highlighted the form-based code, but the scope of that is project-wide.
Yeah.
So the full project limits will be the subject of that public exercise. So there won't be an inefficiency there, thankfully, and we'll bring that same mindset to the other services as well.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Any other comments? I'll just say, yeah, thanks for putting this together. It spoke to a couple of questions I had earlier. I like the Gantt chart that I'm still actually looking at on my computer, but it does show, and it reflects, as you mentioned, there would be progress payments. This isn't a one-time check written out. There will be work done, and then we settle up, if you will. And the primary elements before the end of this year are the design elements and the land agreement. So it might be good maybe to do an informal report sometime in the fourth quarter, just so we're up to speed on what's happening and how the project is progressing.
Absolutely.
That's all I had. Any other questions? So, City Attorney Richie, we go ahead and vote on this now during this business session?
Yes, sir, you could vote on this resolution because it's before you, and then the next resolution if y'all so chose.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on 2024-511. Is there a motion on Resolution 2024-511?
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Anything from Councilmember Chase?
George?
No need.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah,
All right, thanks for
just checking.
All right, please poll the council.
Yes.
Ewing,
Yes.
Borderood,
Yes.
Chase,
Yes?
Holmes.
Aye. I'm going to do the other resolution at the end of the deal. So I'm going to reconvene into work session.
We're in business session
We're in
right now.
business.
Still in business?
You're in business right now, so you would just go to the next resolution.
You still want to do
512.
this resolution, the
Yes,
last
sir.
resolution? Okay, let's go ahead and do the last resolution. But do I need to go into the hearing of visitors right after that?
No.
After the resolution, Michelle would like you to consider the minutes of
Right.
the, and
Which
then-
I was
and
going to
then-
do right now.
Right, and then you could do the hearing of visitors,
I thought that came at the end. We should do it.
Or after you do executive session, that's your choice.
Okay, well, we'll do it because I know we have a couple cards and I don't want to make you all wait. We'll do the hearing of visitors after this resolution. But let's now entertain Resolution 2024-512. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Bearfield? Rodriguez? Ewing?
Yes.
Borderood? Chase?
Yes.
Holmes?
Aye. We will now, the next item to consider is the hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we provide an opportunity for the
Mayor,
public.
I'm sorry, if I may, could you take a vote on, or just approve the
Come
minutes?
first. This is such an odd decision. You know,
I
for
know.
only my third
Sorry.
one, we have all this stuff that's out of order. All right. We will now go to the minutes, which is part of the business session that we are in. This next item of business is consider the minutes of the June 18, 2024 regular city council meeting. These minutes were provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections? If there are no corrections, the minutes stand as approved as submitted. We will now go to the hearing of visitors. Okay. Sir, Ken, we'll get to you. Don't worry. Hang with me. All right. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters for consideration listed on the agenda. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes to speak. The council is unable to conduct a discussion, but will listen, ask staff to look into concerns, and provide follow-up. Please provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to the council. If you are unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. And we have a couple of registered speakers. When called to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. If you are speaking on behalf of a group of 10 or more individuals present, please have those persons stand at the beginning of your comments. You'll be given 10 minutes to address the council. Please note that if you stand in support of a person getting 10 minutes to speak, you're forfeiting your right to speak on that item. For any person addressing the council through the use of a translator, the speaking time will be doubled to accommodate the translation services. While public discourse is very important to this council, we have to maintain order in the meeting so that all persons may be heard and city businesses may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant at Arms shall remove from the council meeting any person who, while addressing the city council or while attending the city council meeting, makes personal or impertinent or slanderous remarks, any person that becomes boisterous, or any person that makes unauthorized remarks from the audience, claps hands, stomps feet, whistles, yells, or makes similar demonstrations. We have a couple of cards. The first one is Ken Willets.
July 4th is coming, so please secure your animals. Instead of spending hours on July 5th looking for your dogs and cats, spend a few minutes July 3rd securing your animals. As a realtor, I drive the streets of Waco and adjacent cities and have noticed an increase of off-leash dogs. I have asked the City Council and the Animal Welfare Board for a joint effort, the city, staff, and citizens, to address off-leash dogs in Waco, and all I've gotten was crickets. So we started a grassroots group to discuss the issues and potential solutions. You should have a copy of our WAG logo, Waco Animal Group. We've had a few meetings, and KXXV Channel 25 heard about us, and they interviewed our group and to discuss what we're about. And I want to personally thank Ashley Nystrom, the City of Waco Chief of Staff, for contacting me and stating that the city wants to participate in our group. Thank you very much. With her and Dory Helm, we met and the meeting went well. I asked for a city staff or two to join our group to help with city programs or city assistance, such as communication. I asked for Millette Harris with her Neighborhood Engagement Department. Ashley also suggested Galen Price with the Waco Housing Department to get along to join our group to see where we can go. The grassroots group has 35 members as of today. Last meeting we had 18 attendees. We have assigned 4 committees and to divide and conquer our mission to reduce the number of leash dogs in Waco. The City of Waco Animal Care page states, June 23rd through June 29th, that's 1 week, 25 dogs were adopted, leaving the shelter. 90 dogs were intaken, and that's 65 more dogs in than out. With these numbers, it's going to be hard to keep the city manager's 93 live exit numbers. City of Waco ordinance page states spay and neutering and microchip is the law. It's on the city page. Spay and neutering and microchipping is critical to maintaining, if possible, the 93% live exit rate earlier talked about. For example, recently a dog entered the shelter. The Humane Society advised the owner spay and neutering is the law. A city shelter staff person called the owner and said the Humane Society was not authorized to say his dog must be spayed. Come and get your dog without being spayed. And he did, and he left the shelter without any cost and without getting the dog fixed. Obviously, the city shelter is not consistent and is not working with the Humane Society. Obviously, the city shelter is not following their own city mandate for spay and neutering. The city manager mentioned a new animal hospital at the shelter. I hope by then the city of Waco has not joined Marlin Animal Shelter and the Austin Animal Shelter in the news and in the courts for poor management.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. I appreciate you. Next up is Cheryl Foster. Cheryl, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, I know. I'm Cheryl Foster, Waco, Texas, 76708, District 5. Good evening. I'm here to throw in my 2 cents worth on the Humane Society and City of Waco ongoing contract negotiations. I have a seat on the Animal Welfare Board, which quite frankly now feels like a soft spot between a rock and a hard place. First, I want to commend the city for their continuing support and all of the significant capital projects at the shelter. And quite frankly, we can't wait for that new clinic. Second, I want to acknowledge the considerable work that the Humane Society staff is doing. Their commitment to the animals is outstanding. They have done phenomenal work on rescue affiliations and rebuilding local relationships after COVID. They continue to find new and innovative ways to promote community sheltering and diversions. The volunteers and staff on both sides are to be commended. It is an incredibly stressful job. I realize that one of the points of contention between the Humane Society and the police and the city is the placement of animal services in the police department. I concur. The police department is just the wrong place for the shelter. Put it back under code compliance, or I've heard compelling arguments for putting it under the Parks Department. Anywhere but the police department. It's not a good fit. It's just not the right vibe. I know the Humane Society wants to sever the relationship with the city. To learn more, on June 19th, I went to the Humane Society board meeting as an observer, and frankly, I was shocked. I have seen no evidence of any financial plan to cover the new operations. I have seen no operational or logistic plans to run a separate entity, and I have seen no transitional plan other than I've got a guy who will let us use a building for 90 days free of charge. By the end of the meeting, they actually had poor Sarah and Brooke running the whole thing out of a broom closet at Street Dog Cafe. That's the old Lula Jane's. The only vote they took was to hire a lawyer to work on contract negotiations. By the way, they found the new contract that was proposed back in January financially acceptable, as did I. And they acknowledged that their current contract with the city was valid, and they didn't have a legal leg to stand on with that ridiculous claim that it wasn't. It does not appear to me that the Humane Society board is in any way, shape, or form ready to take on such a huge and complicated endeavor. If they proceed without putting forth the significant business and process work required, I'm afraid that the collateral damage will overshadow all of the amazing and, quite frankly, miraculous work that was done in 2012. The city is a bureaucratic institution with guidelines, rules, structure, accountability, and the Humane Society is pure passion with an overwhelming desire to help every animal in need. The city needs the Humane Society, and the Humane Society needs the city. I sure hope y'all are able to work this out. Thank you. And yay, I did it.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Appreciate you. Our last hearing here is with Mr. Ephraim Herring. Mr. Herring?
I'm not that eloquent on presenting this, but my name's Ethan Mary. I live at 1046 Chestnut. It's kind of interesting that y'all having our budget meeting today when I came in to talk about my house at 1046 Chestnut. The reason why I started building a house at 1046 Chestnut was a business decision. Because my mother didn't want to go to the rest home, and I invested almost $200,000 of my money for that house. I came in, the first problem we knew, and we brought it to the city, was July 1st, 2017. I brought it to your inspection department. That didn't work. So I sent an email on July 25th to your legal department. That didn't work. I made a concerted effort to talk to the now city manager, Bradley Ford. That didn't work. I talked to Galen Price and the housing department. That didn't work. So I hired an attorney to talk to the legal department. He got frustrated with talking to y'all. That didn't work. So now I've lost over the last 7 years, both of you, like I was talking earlier about investments. I got product right now that's rotting for the last 7 years because I can't use the house. And yesterday I went in my house. Well, I call it a storage shed because you can't live in it by state law and by city ordinances because there's a certificate of occupancy showed up that the city doesn't have on file. We're trying to figure out where it came from. So the city knew back in July 1st of 2017 that y'all, that the developer, which y'all give money to on a yearly basis, and y'all gave him some money this year, didn't build a house in accordance with city regulations and code. Didn't build a house in accordance with submitted plans. So therefore, I'm left with hanging in the bag. I can't use the document again because it's against federal law, against state law, against y'all law. So my question is simple. Why are you denying me access to make funds for the last 2,564 days? That house is going to be my income on my retirement, but I can't do it now. My mom's done passed away, my brother's done passed away because we decided to use that house to make an income. So now we can't. So now I got a storage shed that cost me actually cost me $200,000 to sit there and watch my taxes go up. And each year they go by and appraise it, and then they find out you can't sell it for what they appraise it at. All I'm asking is simple. What do y'all need to give me a solution to a problem that y'all caused? Because without that one document that y'all had in control, this wouldn't have happened. If they didn't have access to that certificate of occupancy, my attorneys could have took care of this problem. But somebody in y'all department gave that document to them. God bless you, be safe, but y'all have the same problem I'm having right now. No income.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Is there anyone else present who'd like to speak during the hearing of visitors? Seeing no one, we will close the hearing of visitors and we'll now recess the regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 8:01 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the city council will go into executive session, Personnel, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, discussion of the city's attorney appointment process, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. We are now in executive session.
We will now reconvene the regular session at 8:38. Are there any council comments or requests for scheduling of future agenda items?
Mayor, as I stand here, just encouraging the public to attend 4th on the Brazos at Touchdown Alley. I think the gates open around 7, so come join us there. It's going to be a great night, and permission for us to leave here tonight.
Just to get it in the public record, big shout out to Solid Waste. They have had their hands full with the storms that we had the last couple of months and getting all of the brush picked up, and they've done a phenomenal job of that. So I just wanted to say that.
And I'll echo I appreciate the work of the water department. There's been a couple of emergencies occurred there over the last couple of weeks that the staff has handled in a very responsible fashion. Any other?
I apologize for speaking after you, but I need people to realize that COVID is still a thing. If you haven't gotten your vaccines, please go do so. There's been an uptick in COVID over the past few weeks, and especially in this community, so be mindful. We need to learn.
All right, there being any other business, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 8:39 PM.